The movie begins with a tech billionaire named Slater King invites a waitress named Frida to his private island for a fun vacation with his friends. As strange things happen around her, Frida starts to question what's real. One day, while lighting incense, she shares a photo of her nail art on social media. While scrolling through her feed, she sees Slater apologizing for his past mistakes. Curious, she looks him up and finds out that he disappeared from public life 2 years ago but is back now. In an interview, Slater talks about how he bought an island and changed his lifestyle, saying he grows his own food and wears the same clothes every day. When asked about his company's charitable work, he admits he doesn't expect anyone to forgive him but still apologizes for his past actions. Just then, Frida's best friend Jess interrupts, asking for a lighter and money to pay their landlord. Frida realizes Jess is stressed and needs a vacation. Later, at the King Tech Gala where Frida works as a cocktail waitress, her manager reminds her not to chat with guests like she did last year. Jess shows up, and they talk about Jess's complicated relationship with her ex-boyfriend. Jess feels scared of being alone. When Slater is called to the stage, Frida spills champagne on a guest's dress. Jess teases her for looking at Slater, and they decide to change into dresses to join the party. When they try to sneak into a private area, Slater's bodyguard, Stan, stops them. Frida accidentally slips and falls, cutting her finger on the broken glass. Slater helps her up and fixes her shoe while Stan gives her a band-aid. Later, Slater introduces Frida to his therapist Rich and jokes with him. Then, he introduces her to his friends. When Frida compliments Sarah's nails, Sarah seems annoyed that Frida caught Slater's attention. They all party together, and Slater's assistant Stacy reminds him it's time to leave. Slater invites Frida and Jess to join him and his friends on his private island for a few days. Soon, the group takes Slater's private jet to the tropical paradise, and they eventually arrive at the lavish villa. Before entering the house, Stacy collects all of their phones, which Jess thinks is strange. Then Vic tells everyone to stand on the steps so he can take a group photo using his Polaroid camera. When she enters her room, Frida smells the fresh flowers on the table, and the billionaire says there are clothes in the closet that she can use. Before he leaves, the man thanks her for coming. After washing up, the woman sees a perfume bottle on the sink labeled Desideria, and she sprays it on herself. She opens a drawer and finds a lip gloss tube but realizes that it's expired. On the bed, she sees that someone laid out the clothes for her. Suddenly, she hears a noise behind her, and an old maid with a snake tattoo on her arm calls her Red Rabbit and touches her cheek. Confused, Frida doesn't know what she's talking about, so the maid leaves. Later, Jess points out how weird it is that there are clothes for them to wear. They ask 2 workers where they're supposed to go, but the men just smile and continue carting away flowers. Soon, the group spends the day lounging by the pool. Frida watches Slater refilling his e-cigarette and catching a coconut that Sarah tosses toward him. Jess realizes she recognized the woman because she was on the reality show Hot Survivor Babes. Sarah expertly opens the coconut with a knife and offers the billionaire the first sip, and their flirting causes the distracted Frida to choke on a raspberry. Later, Slater takes the waitress on a tour of the property and picks a flower off the vine. He says it's called Desideria and only grows on the island. Then the woman shares that she thought his parties would be more over-the-top and outlandish with how the media described them. So, he explains that since going to therapy he's mellowed down but admits that he still partakes in the occasional illicit substance. They pass the workers killing a lash viper, and Slater says they're having problems controlling the snake population on the island. The billionaire confides that he's working on trauma therapy with Rich because he can't remember anything before the age of 10. Frida wonders why he wants to remember awful memories, and quips that she'd gladly pay someone to help her forget certain things from her past. Seconds later, Stacy appears carrying multiple red paper bags and tells her boss that she placed his e-cigarette liquid on his desk and that the workers moved the red chair to where he wanted. That evening, the group enjoys a meal prepared by Cody, who's a chef, and they raise their glasses to celebrate Camilla finalizing the sale of her app to King Tech. While leaning over her plate, Frida stains her white dress on the rare steak, so Slater assures her that it's okay. When Vic teases the waitress about how she doesn't have direction in life, the billionaire sticks up for her by telling her to ask the CFO how he lost his pinky finger. After dinner, Vic takes out a dropper bottle, and everyone ingests the hallucinogenic substance. For the rest of the night, the intoxicated group parties on the lawn. Before going to sleep next to Jess, Frida sees that the stain on her dress disappeared, but she brushes it off. The next day, Heather asks Vic about his pinky, but he quickly changes the subject. That night they take the hallucinogenic substance again, and the 5 women playfully cover their heads with white scarves and run across the yard. One evening, Frida sprays on the Desideria perfume, and the billionaire says she smells nice. Then, he asks about the scar on the side of her face, but she says she doesn't know how she got it. Slater compliments her nails, so the woman explains that she does them herself. She adds that she specializes in animal designs, and the ones she has on right now are blue cats. Even though they were having a great conversation, Slater says he needs to go to bed because he has therapy tomorrow. As he's walking away, the waitress tries to tell him that he forgot his e-cigarette. The next morning, Frida smiles as she looks at the device in her hand. Suddenly, she notices the dirt under her fingernails and wonders how they got so filthy. Later, she gives the device back to the billionaire, and Vic introduces her to Rich. The therapist offers his hand, so the waitress reminds him that they already met at the gala, and he seems taken aback by her statement. Before he leaves, Rich thanks Slater for the goodies inside the red gift bag. Meanwhile, Cody asks the other women if they've seen his missing chef's knife. Jess searches for her lighter and sees Heather using it, wondering why she can't remember lending it to her. Then, the jealous Sarah disdainfully watches Frida and Slater talking in the distance. Later, the waitress asks the billionaire what day it is, and he says he doesn't know. She asks when they're leaving, and he says they can leave whenever she wants, but she points out that he didn't answer her question. To ease her thoughts, the man wants to know if she's having fun, and she says yes. That night, Jess asks the group about her lighter, and Sarah finally brings it out of her pocket but swears she doesn't remember taking it. Later, while they continue the party on the lawn, Frida and the reality star vie for Slater's attention. Suddenly, they hear Jess screaming, and she says a snake bit her. They spot the lash viper slithering in the grass, so the billionaire kills it with a wine bottle. The worried woman thinks she should go to the hospital, so Slater assures her that although the animal is venomous, the bite won't kill her. Later, Jess tells her friend that she feels weird and wants her phone back. Frida thinks she just needs some sleep, insisting that there's something wrong with the island. However, instead of listening to her friend's concerns, the nail artist begs her to understand why she wants to stay. She adds that for the first time in her life, she doesn't feel invisible. While the others continue partying, Jess stares at the night sky while her nose bleeds. The next day, Frida discovers a hut filled with red gift bags. In a side room, she finds the old maid who offers her a swig of a mysterious yellow liquid. To her horror, she learns that the substance in the bottle is lash viper venom. As the terrified woman leaves the room, the maid repeatedly calls her Red Rabbit. Outside, she runs into Cody, and when he asks what she's doing in that part of the island, she says she got lost. That night, while the 5 women scamper across the lawn, Heather stops and asks the others why they're all running. Unable to answer her question, they all collapse to the ground in laughter. In a dream, Frida envisions a man's bare chest with a gold necklace around his neck and Jess telling her to hide a knife. The next morning, she wakes up with a nosebleed and finds dirt under her fingernails again. At breakfast, Heather says she doesn't remember cutting her bangs. Then, Lucas appears and the women point out that he has a black eye. The men propose that they all go fishing, but Sarah suggests the women stay behind so they can have a day to themselves. Later, the reality star asks for the lighter, so Frida wonders where Jess is. To her surprise, they don't know who she's talking about. So, the waitress runs to her friend's room, but it's just a storage area for random pieces of furniture. In the bathroom, the distraught woman tries to wake herself up, hoping she's just having a dream. She slams her hands on the mirror, and Cody's missing knife falls out. Suddenly, Sarah knocks on her door and shows her the lighter with Jess's name written on it. Later, the waitress says she knew her friend was on the island and remembers her saying that there was something wrong with this place. The reality star points out that she would have remembered if there were another person there with them, but Frida thinks it's because they're forgetting a huge chunk of their time on the island. Then, Sarah acknowledges that although she's having fun, there's a part of her that hates being there. The waitress brings up the dirt under her nails, so the reality star shows her the bruise on her arm and says she doesn't remember how she got it. Eventually, the reality star shares that she recently met Cody at a coffee shop because he kept saying that he's friends with Slater, and they both realize how weird it is that they agreed to go to the island with men they barely knew. Sarah says that the vacation was too good to be true, and that the men are trying to control them by making them look crazy. She wonders how they're making the women forget, so they decide to do some investigating. In the hut, Frida finds Desideria perfume bottles inside the red gift bags, and they believe Slater incorporated the flower's special properties into the substance, which makes whoever wears the fragrance lose their memories. The reality star suggests calling the authorities, but the waitress thinks they don't have sufficient evidence to back their story. Sarah wonders why she can't recall meeting Jess, so the waitress remembers a viper bit her friend while she drank the venom. So she takes the bottle from the drawer and tells her companion to drink it. To trick Heather and Camilla into ingesting the antidote, the reality star prepares laced cocktails for them to enjoy. When Stacy appears, they encourage her to drink with them. Then Frida sneaks into the billionaire's office to retrieve their phones, and she tells Sarah to yell out a code word so she'll know when the men arrive. Later, the reality star has a nosebleed, implying that she's slowly regaining her memory. Suddenly, Cody playfully grabs her from behind, and she elbows him in the nose, saying she doesn't like getting tickled. In the office, Frida finally finds the phones inside a cabinet, but none of them have service. When she hears the reality star yelling the code word, she realizes the men are back, so she tries to hide the Polaroids that fell out of a box and stuffs some of them under her clothes. As she looks at the pictures, she sees images of rich older men smiling and holding up red gift bags. Eventually, Slater arrives and grabs e-cigarette juice from his drawer, but he doesn't notice the waitress hiding under the desk. Seconds later, Frida's full memories return, and she remembers how the men took advantage of the women every single night and made them forget what happened by using the flower's essence in the perfume and their food. She also recalls how Slater killed Jess because her memory could no longer be erased, revealing that the men made the women believe that she was never on the island. After the waitress manages to sneak out of the office, she tells Sarah what happened to Jess, and they agree to continue playing along until Heather and Camilla regain their memories. During dinner, Frida sees the gold necklace around the billionaire's neck and remembers the men chasing and abusing the women. She recalls Slater telling Rich that the worse the trauma he inflicts on the waitress, the more she'll forget it come morning. He promises they'll get her cleaned up after, and she'll be back to having the time of her life tomorrow. Then Frida recognizes Lucas's perfume as Desideria and compliments him. To keep up appearances, the waitress and reality star decide to dance for the men. Sarah slyly grabs the corkscrew from the table and hides it inside a flower pot. Soon, Camilla's memories return and her nose starts to bleed. Concurrently, Slater nuzzles Frida's neck and says that she smells different, implying that she isn't wearing the perfume. Suddenly, they hear screaming, and the billionaire leaves to see what it is. By the pool, Camilla stabs Tom with an ice pick until he perishes, then Slater tackles her to keep her under control. Meanwhile, Sarah grabs the corkscrew from the flower pot, stabs Cody's hand and kicks him into the pool. Concurrently, Heather, who's also regained her memories, chases after Vic. She manages to knock him to the floor, but as she repeatedly hits his head with a heavy object, Stan shoots her dead. The bodyguard spots the fleeing waitress, so he chases her into the jungle. Just as he's about to shoot her, Sarah appears, knocks him down, and bludgeons him to death with a rock. Before returning to the villa, the reality star grabs the bodyguard's gun. The 4 remaining men hide in Slater's office, worrying about what will happen to them if the women escape and reveal their evil deeds. Meanwhile, Frida returns to her room and slips on the bathroom floor, causing the Polaroids to spill out of her dress. Suddenly, Stacy, who has also regained her memories, attacks the waitress because she prefers forgetting about being complicit in Slater's sinister deeds. The older woman pushes Frida against the mirror, causing the hidden knife to fall out. Then, she uses the blade to stab the assistant, who immediately dies. In the woods, Sarah shoots Cody, finally getting revenge for everything he has done to her. Concurrently, the billionaire tells the perplexed Lucas that although he didn't participate in the abuse of the women, he never actively tried to help them, implying that just like Stacy, he uses the perfume on himself to avoid remembering his friend's behavior. Sarah arrives at Frida's room. The waitress shows the reality star her Polaroid from last year, showing that she has been to the island before. To get the men to open the office door, Frida pretends to need help. But instead of the billionaire, Lucas opens the door and Sarah shoots him. The waitress tries to attack Slater, but he takes her weapon and pulls her into the office, trapping her with him. They fight, and she falls to the floor and hits her head. This helps her remember that the expired lip gloss was hers, and that the scar on her leg came from a sharp rock when she tried to escape from the billionaire. She also remembers him complimenting her red rabbit nails, which explains why the maid kept calling her that. When Frida wakes up, she realizes Slater has tied her up. Vic yells at her, and the billionaire says his friend still hasn't forgiven her for biting off his pinky finger last year. Slater mocks her apology and says that to move on, they have to forget. He suggests using perfume to erase their memories and start fresh. But while he talks, Frida quietly uses a glass shard to cut through her ropes. When Slater hears Sarah shoot at the locked door, he leaves the room to find her. He finds her trying to hide in the pool, grabs her, and pulls her back to the office. Free from her ropes, the waitress grabs a knife from the table and accidentally drops the e-cigarette. Slater picks up the e-cigarette and takes the knife from her. He says he won't kill her because she's his best friend. Before he puts the knife to Sarah's throat, he takes a hit from the e-cigarette. A moment later, he drops the knife and panics when he sees all the dead bodies. He stumbles around, knocking over candles and starting a fire. Frida lifts her dress to show a hidden bottle of Desideria perfume. She used it to lace Slater's e-cigarette, making him forget everything that happened that night. Confused, he tries to approach the waitress but slips and hits his head on the table. Meanwhile, the injured CFO realizes he is about to die in the burning building. Outside, the maid watches the villa burn and laughs happily. Eventually, the women escape the fire, and Sarah asks Frida if she knows what she's doing after saving the unconscious billionaire from the flames. Months later, at the King Tech Gala, Rich talks to a confused Slater, who doesn't seem to remember who he is. When the therapist introduces himself to Slater's wife, he realizes it's Frida, and she tells her guards to capture him. Frida keeps Slater under control by adding Desideria essence to his e-cigarette juice. She got revenge on the men who hurt her and her friends, and became CEO of the company, taking all the power away from Slater. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.